to make certain that not only that we go through our primary, but we begin to start thinking about what we're going to need to do in November when we have the general election. This is just a dry run for the implementation of Senate Bill 1. The fact is that we know that the early voting starts on the 14th, that the last day to apply for a ballot is going to be on the 18th, and the final day to early vote is going to be February the 25th, and the election's on March the 1st. And yes, there has been a lot of talk about what we need to do as it relates to preparing for this election, as it relates to making sure, number one, we have the correct voter ID. And we've gone over that over and over again as it relates to what is important. And as we go through this primary, we've got to make certain that we understand this is kind of just a dry run for what we're going to end up having to do in November. And so from that vantage point, we need to make sure we take notes in terms of what the problems we will encounter as it relates to implementing all of the mandates of the new election laws, which we're still fighting, by the way. But we've got to prepare just in case we don't have a friendly judiciary that will follow the Constitution. And so from that standpoint, what are we going to do in 2022? We have a Supreme Court that's a very conservative Supreme Court. You look at the type of cases they're taking. You look at what happened in Alabama this week in terms of a 5-4 decision to frankly allow the Alabama legislature to disenfranchise African-American voters in that particular state. You look at the Supreme Court taking up 2 affirmative action cases. And so a lot of the issues that we have dealt with in the past are before the Supreme Court. You look at the issue of women's rights. Roe versus Wade is in the crosshairs of the Supreme Court. The question is what will be done. And I'm hoping that President Biden, makes it good on his promise and nominate an African-American female to the highest court in this country, and that we have the Democrats in Congress that will do their job. Very disappointed that Democrats often have power, but for some strange reason, we're afraid to utilize it. But that's it. That being said, the question becomes, what are we going to do in 2022? I know as we come on, we have a guest with us. We have Commissioner John Wiley Price. He needs no introduction. We have State Representative Victoria Naive Corrido also, and hopefully I got that right, the last name. And we're expecting Justice Thomas Jones also. But let me start off with Commissioner Price, because I know that he has to go to a memorial service for our good friend Marvin Robinson, who's done a lot for the city, this county, and also the state. He died a few weeks ago, and there's a memorial service for him. If I can make it over there, Commissioner, I'm going to be there. I know that you're having problems with your camera, but being respectful of your time, I wanted to make certain that we gave you ample opportunity to make whatever presentation that you feel appropriate in terms of what we're going to do in 2022. Representative Criado, thank you. Am I saying it right, Victoria? Criado?
Criado, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
Yeah, well, good morning, Senator, and all of those of you on the call, and Madam State Representative. You know, it is critical time. My staff and I spent yesterday with the elections administrator, and I want to make this very clear. The elections administrator is hired by an election commission made up of both party chairs, the county judge, the county clerk, and the county tax assessor. All we can do is probe him. They evaluate him while we set the budget in Dallas County. You know, his evaluation basically comes from those individuals who's hired him. And so needless to say, we've had some concern. In fact, my staff and I, this morning, we're going through the various ballots, mail ballots that have basically been rejected. And there's a whole contingency this morning going through about 1,300 ballots. We've got to, unfortunately, kind of do double time now. with regards to this election. We had some real concerns on yesterday, with not only voter registration cards, but just the whole handling. I was the only kind of commissioner who kind of objected to us not being just a standalone primary. I think Tarrant County is standalone. I know Travis County is. I think Harris County is. And we got a joint election here. And it gives me some real pause in terms of governance and management. However, that's not going to be a detraction. We're monitoring. We are taking and moving with dispatch. We watched the Secretary of State as they issued what they call a decline of individuals or purging of individuals supposedly from our rolls. We basically admonished the administrator and said, hey, because a number of those people who they said needed to be purged were in fact citizens. And so we're just having to check and double check everything that we're doing. We're taking nothing for granted. As you know, Senator and State Representative and all on the call, we saw that Texas has got 2 million more voters with regards to the rolls now. And so we are going to have to make sure. I know historically we've relied on the van system for those individuals, but we got some new voters out there. And as such, we need all hands on deck, all efforts coming forward. I've done about 44,000 cards out there. I know that a number of other offices are continuing to work, but we've just got to. We've got to step it up. And as you said, on Monday, if we're going to show Valentine, we're going to show that we're in love with ourselves, and we're going to do what we need to do. I've got a process by which we've got to get those voters to the poll. 47 early voting sites in Dallas County. 47. They can vote at any of those voting sites. 47. Unfortunately, there's only 18 that are south of I-30. As you know now, my district encompasses 70% of Dallas County, so I've gone all the way up into Rockwall, Saxe, and Wiley. But below I-30, it's 18 voting sites. A lion's share of our votes come out of those particular voting sites. And so we're making sure that they are properly staffed, the equipment. And so that, again, yesterday we were checking and double checking this model. So we're going to be monitoring very closely what's going on, Senator.
Okay, let me ask you a question, Commissioner.
Sure.
You said in terms of early voting locations, how many are in the county now?
There are 47 early voting sites, and 18 of them are south of I-30. Now, I pick up in my district, I probably have of the 47, given the 4 that I've picked up going on the eastern part of the county. I'm now at about 13. I've got 13 in my district, but there's 47 early voting sites.
How does that compare with 2018?
It's basically the same. I think we've added a couple.
I said 2018. I'm at 2020.
We added the colleges. We added in Pleasant Grove. We added El Centro. We've added Cedar Valley, the one on Buckner, Mountain View. So yeah, we've added the colleges. That's what we added.
Okay. One of the things I'm going to want to be able to do is I need you to stand by, because I really want to get Representative Criado I said it right. Did I say it right, Victoria?
Yaves.
Yeah.
That's right, Senator.
State Representative Criado is here with us, and frankly, she really needs no introduction. She's been around for a few minutes. She's a member of the Texas House, House District 107. Do you have an opponent this time around, Victoria?
We have a libertarian opponent.
So let me say that again. Do you have an opponent?
But we're gonna win. I'll show you that. I feel confident we'll win.
Unlike Commissioner Price and myself, we've been around a while, and I think most people know who we are. Victoria is an up-and-comer. She represents House District 107, which includes parts of East Dallas, Mesquite, South Garland. We share some of those areas now that I'm further in the east of the district for senatorial purposes. During 2021 legislative session, she was appointed chair of the Juvenile Justice and Families Issues Committee, which means that she is very involved in issues impacting those particular subject areas, and is one of the 6 Latinas in the history. Let me underscore that again, in the history of Texas House to be appointed a chair. Now that you heard what Commissioner Price just said about the population, and she's one of 6 in the history of the state of Texas to be appointed a chair. Representative Naive has passed the language of more than 20 bills, including the historic Lavanina Masters Act, which was allotted an unprecedented $50 million from the state budget in the 86th legislative session to tackle the rape kit backlog. I can go on and on about the chair, saying that she was the legislator of the year in 2021, and that she has been applauded by numerous people and organizations for her public service and her leadership in the Texas House in the state of Texas. So Victoria, what are we going to do in 2022 to make certain, and Commissioner, this is going to be one of the questions, how do we, year after year, we talk about the issues of getting people out to vote. And for some strange reason, we're still not getting the maximum turnout that we need in order to maintain maintain the people that we have in office right now, and also with the state of Texas. So what do we do in 2022? State Representative.
And thank you so much for the invite, Senator. I'm honored to be here, and I may not have eggs in front of me, but I have my coffee ready to go. So, and also thank you to Commissioner John Wiley Price. I know he's done so much good work in our community throughout the years, and we thank you for your service. And and I'll share with you, Senator West, as you know, and for our friends who are viewing online and listening, this legislative session was a tough battle, to the point where we, Texas House Democrats and senators, went to travel to Washington, D.C. to shine a national spotlight on what was happening with respect to our voting rights in the Texas legislature. We know that one vote has the power to change the trajectory of our nation and has the power to change the trajectory of our local communities. When I first won in 2016, we were challenging a Republican incumbent. They told us, you can't do it, it's too hard, he has way more money in his campaign account. But we worked very hard, knocking on doors, registering voters, and flipped that seat thanks to the help of the senator and many of individuals in our community. And we won. It was a tight margin, 50.8 to 49.2%. But the way we did that, one of the ways we did that was talking to registered voters who nobody's ever knocked on their door before. Nobody's ever sent them mail. And, I'm happy to speak to, in particular, the Latino community and our growing population right here in Dallas and all across the state. The census data showed that not just Latinos, but Latinos, our African-American community, people of color accounted for 95% of the growth in Texas in the past 10 years, which is what the census data showed. That gave Texas 2 additional congressional seats. So we got additional representation in Washington, D.C. But even though those 2 seats accounted for, were because of us, people of color, those 2 seats were redrawn by Republicans to be white majority districts. Okay, so let me say that again. 95% of the growth was because of Latino or African American community and others. But the two new districts were white majority. In other parts, we advocated very hard and laid a record. We didn't have the votes in the House or the Senate, but we worked very hard to lay a record for litigation purposes. So to show that the maps that were drawn were discriminatory. They're trying to take away our power and our vote because of our growing strength, because of our growing votes. In our district, I feel like it's a little microcosm of Texas or the way it was previously drawn. And so the Latino population, for example, the vote grew substantially in our district because we were talking to them and because we were knocking on their door and sending them mail and asking them to turn out. But we won with the coalition, and we have to continue to work. We cannot let up, especially now with so much at stake, with our democracy really at stake. I'm happy to get into a lot of other issues, but really I think it's going to take all of us continuing to do that really hard work. It's not easy, but of knocking on doors and listening to what issues are important to our community and then asking them for their vote.
Commissioner, what are your thoughts about that? How do we mobilize this vote better than we've done in the past?
Well, again, I'm going to go back, Senator and Representative Neves, based on what I said. It's got to be all hands on deck. I'm not on the ballot this year, but you can't tell. I've done the same amount of almost energy. I just haven't put out my campaign signs, but I'm mailing. I'm making sure that I am involved. I think that we've got to stop this siloing. I run when I'm on the ballot. No, every time there's an election, as far as I'm concerned, I'm on the ballot. And it's incumbent upon me to make sure that we put together the kind of team that moves Dallas County, forward. And so I think that's got to be the engagement. The fact that, districts 1 and 3 run in presidential years and others run in, this is considered, quote, an off election year. But as I said when I began, we got 2 million more voters than we had, of just a couple of years ago. So now, how are we going to get those, quote, new voters, number one, and number two, get those individuals who are registered, who haven't voted. What we did in our allocation in terms of both clerks and workers for these 47 early voting sites, and you can vote at any of them. Okay, and we'll open bright and early on Monday morning. You can get have got to be able to say, hey, look, they're spread out, but we know pretty much where the historical voters are going to cast their lot. As I said, the only thing we basically added this time were the Dallas College, the community colleges. And of course, UNT is in that as well. And so one of the things we've got to do is act as though we've got to campaign as though we're on the ballot, Senator. I mean, it's just that simple. And until we do that, until we understand what's at stake, we're not going to make it. I think we appropriated about 5% more, and again, in an off election year, in terms of workers, in terms of clerks and all at these various polling places. So we are at least anticipating some turnout. We've seen a very robust campaigning, but for those individuals who are not on the ballot, we need to be just as engaged as if we were.
Let me give you a perspective too. The question is, Commissioner, Representative, do we campaign hard during the primaries, or should we be saving our war chest to campaign vigorously during the general election, where it makes a difference in terms of who actually will be elected to the state house, state senate, county commissioners court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's the latter as opposed to the former. That is saving as many resources as possible to combine those resources in order to elect people from the Democratic Party. What are y'all's thoughts about that?
Well, I'll yield to my Madam State Representative, but let me just tell you something. You need to make sure you're going to be in the November lineup. And I hear you, Senator. I wish we were able to call and manage the primaries differently. But as you know, in this quote democracy, all you got to do is say, "Hey, I want to run," and you jump up and run. Whether you have resources, whether you have energy, you say, "I'm going to run." And once you make that position, you got to defend on it. You got to decide that you got to make sure that you're going to be, in that November thing. I'd love to see a kind of a combined campaign and a real effort because, as you said, November is it. But you got to get past March 1st and or whatever runoffs that might present themselves if there's more than two individuals in that race. You just heard Representative Evans say, Madam Chair, just said, she won by the skin of her teeth.
That was the general election that we're talking about.
No, well, I hear you about general, but she, she was in the general, but we got to get to general. She's not gonna probably have the issue getting to the general where she is because she's already the libertarian to be in the general. But we got how many races we have that are contested. So we've got to get there, and the party has some growing pains. In that, I guess this is family, but hell, we got some real growing pains. We got a lot of new people who, don't really, understand some of the decisions that need to be made.
And what I'll add to that, Senator and Commissioner, is that I think it should be year-round, focusing on voters in the primary and the general. For Latinos in particular, we have a lot of new voters where we're trying to create a culture of voting and voting often in every election. And so a lot of them, I think just a lot of new voters in general don't know what a primary is. So for us, it's doing like the basic 101. What is a Democratic primary? Who comes out of it? And I try to use football as an example, and sort of to make it to the playoffs, you have to get through, the first round. And so, you have to, and so I think it's just the more often that folks vote, the easier it is. And it's not as intimidating or scary for new voters to vote once they're in the habit. So.
Well,
and we got to, Senator, tell them that we have people there to assist. And by the way, you can carry assistance up in the polling places, and you can carry assistance in the polling location. Traditionally we've had to arm wrestle about that particularly. You can carry aides up in the polling place to assist you in your voting.
Exactly, and that's why, and I'm gonna go right back to what I talked about a second ago. That's why it's important that we look at this primary as a kind of a test case in terms of what we need to make certain that we tweak to be better prepared in the fall. But I want to go back to the question that I just raised. Time and time again, John, I mean, we've been in office for an extended period of time. I'll leave it like that. And we've consistently said that we need to turn the vote in. And again, we ought to do that over and over and over again. And then we have people that always talk about the resources necessary, Victoria, to be able to continue to develop that culture of voting year round. What are y'all's thoughts about the ability to be able to get the resources to do exactly what we're talking about? That is year-round engagement, and also, John, to make certain that as we go through these primaries where you have 50 million different people running, to be able to independently come in with resources to say we think this person or that person will be best suited to be a part of the Democratic ticket in the fall.
Well, that's again,
A loaded question, I know.
yeah, Madam Chair. You know, that's real difficult to manage, Senator, as you know. When individuals who some are perennial runners. I mean, you and I've had the fortune of just having to run maybe once or twice, but some are just perennial, and it drains on the resources, and they don't ever get the overall big picture of what that does, either with the party or even with voters. And I understand everybody has their quote voter, what they believe is their voter constituency. But when you continue to get 1%, 2% vote, and you're just kind of a perennial runner year after year, that drains from the overall collective power going forward. I would love to see us raise money. I mean, it's difficult enough for us to raise money just for when it's our campaign. As I said, that's one of the reasons I try not to be selfish and say, even though I'm not on the ballot, what happens in off election years impacts it. I mean, our judges are off election years. Okay, that very few run when we run in presidential years. Those individuals that impact us, the district attorneys, they run in off election years. And so my colleagues who are in 2, 4, and the county judge. And so I think that we just have to constantly say, hey, it makes a difference. We need to weigh in. And whatever political capital we think we've amassed over the years, then we need to be able to, we need to spend that. And as one local reporter said, that's my 2 cents, and I need to spend it wisely. That's my political capital, and I need to at least think I know what's going on in and around the courthouse. I mean, I don't just do that because I pull something out of my head. I have a judicial management report, and based on that judicial management report, I know who's performing. I don't care whether you're civil or you're criminal. I know what you're doing. I know how many cases are being filed, how many are being dismissed. Same with JPs. So we have got to be able to say, hey, this is what this group of judges, they're working. There's some, they're there, but they may not be working. And see, and I'm going to tell you at the end of the day, Senator, I'm going to call it. We did that in 1999. Because as you know, there's the executive branch, both of you, the executive branch, there's the legislative branch, and then there's the judicial branch. Only thing I've got is my ability to talk about in a management way what they are doing. And that's all I got. I don't have any jurisdiction. The Commission on Judicial Conduct it takes and controls all of their action. I can't tell them what to do. We can't tell them what to do. The state, y'all give them a percentage of their budget. We give them a percentage of the budget. And so I have nothing to say but create tools whereby both me and the citizenry can say, how are they performing? I've read some things lately. Say, oh, well, we need more individuals. Somebody manages them. I'd love probation does not come under us. It's under the judges. They don't report to CSCD. Community supervision does not report to us. So how are they performing? You've heard me at your office when I have an issue with parole. That's you guys at the state. I don't have anything to say about it. But as a result, Dallas County takes $12 million of your money every month. And we have to manage custody in this thing called the adult system. That doesn't even say anything about what's going on in the juvenile system. So I'm saying it's not enough for people to adorn these benches and all. It's are they performing? Are we giving them the tools to be able to get programs that divert, deflect, You can't keep doing the systems the same way. You can't lock it up. $12 million. And pre-COVID, we were at $8.5 million. So right now, the system is costing us an extra $3.5 million because of everything from COVID on back. But a lot of it is performance.
Representative, what are your thoughts concerning that?
Sure. And I think in terms of finances, I'll look at it from a campaign perspective and our state really needing more attention and funds from the National Democratic Party. For example, Texas has been overlooked in the past whenever they look at where to invest to help turn out the vote for for national candidates. But the fact is that what happens in Texas affects the whole country. And because we're so large, with everything from reproductive rights to the voting rights, we're, I think the best state, but certainly we have a lot of work to do in terms of turning out more voters. So if the national party would invest more in our state, I think that would make a big difference. The other thing is, and we are on the verge of flipping, and that continues to be a reason why they're trying to make it harder for us to vote. But when funds do come to our state, I'll also say that there is folks may not want to hear this, but the fact is that those funds have not been equitably distributed. Whenever you look at where some of those funds go, they may go to, white candidates in other parts of the state that end up losing substantially when if those funds were invested in our Black or Latino communities where we have the votes, we have the numbers, you just need to invest in us and take time to knock on our doors and send us mail and do everything that you do in other parts of the city or the state, we will turn out. That there's a clear correlation between knocking on a door and somebody turning out to vote. So I think that also needs to be addressed from the state and national level in terms of investing in Texas and where to properly and equitably invest as well.
And to both of you, and Thomas, Judge Jones is trying to get in right now. Here's the situation. Do you think donors are weary now? Dallas County, we've been blue since 2006, 2004, 2006.
2006.
That's when Charlie Montgomery, frankly, she came over. She switched parties and came over. And then several of us got together and contributed to the Democratic Party in order to make certain that we won that election. And so the question is, I'm trying to figure out whether donors are becoming weary now, given that we've said over and over and over again that we want to win these elections. And so when you have these primary contests where you have several people involved in the races, donors have to make decisions concerning those races and then turn around and make certain that they support the party's efforts in the fall. And so what do we do in order to make certain that the donors don't, quote unquote, get financial fatigue in supporting the Democratic Party? We've got to win. And some of the things that Victoria, that you were just talking about, is where we've got to expend dollars to make certain that we engage in activities that highly correlate with turning out the vote. John, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, and I think one of the things Madam Chair said a few minutes ago is that who becomes the beneficiary of these so-called political action committees' interest as it comes into the area. It's just amazing now. What's kind of going on with PACs and who's involved. I haven't seen this kind of involvement with a PAC in quite some time, and especially in the Black community. But again, all you got to do is look behind the PAC and see, kind of who's there. It's Senator. And as she said, that's where the real revenue stream and the money is coming from. Yeah, we got some local donors, and unfortunately, it's the same individuals, and they're trying to make decisions. I don't know how you ever control that, except that you talk about individuals who they say they want to run, and I get that. But, I mean, long before I ran, and you too, but, I mean, we've been involved in politics, not only here, but across the state. And I know there's no prerequisite, but all of a sudden, you go to bed one night and you wake up the next morning, and you say, I have a dream. I want to be a candidate. Well, you don't understand what that does in terms of drawing, resources from maybe, like I said, other candidates, and eventually, the main stage, or as the Madam Chair said a few minutes ago, the Super Bowl. I mean, that's what we're trying to get to in November. So by the time you run in this primary, and then if there's a runoff, the cost of the energy, the drain, it's just incredible. And I still don't think people who, like you said, have the dream and decide they want to get up and go do it, they don't understand how it impacts us.
Thank you. And I hope that donors see that our communities are worth investing in. We have so many voters that are registered that have not voted in a really long time. We have a lot of people who are registering for the first time. And, I'm hoping that donors will see the number of votes that are right here just in Dallas County alone. And when we couple that with Tarrant and Collin and the surrounding counties, the votes in the urban areas in our state alone have the power to flip this state. And so long as those statewide organizations, those statewide candidates in our locals are continuing to invest in the urban areas, Dallas, Fort Worth, Metroplex, we're going to get to where we need to be and flip this state.
Senator, I'm going to go, but let me say this. I noticed in the redistricting, you 254 counties. Do you realize 17 million of the 26 million people in this state are in 12 counties? She just talked about urban. 17 million are in 12 counties. Now, I know you got to run across the state and, get your airplane and do whatever you got to do. But, it's 17 million people are in 12 counties.
How many people do we have across the state that are registered to vote? 17 million.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so, but again, the 254 counties, and you got 12 counties with 17 million. I'm just saying, my daddy used to say, you fish where there are fish. And I'm not saying ignore the rest of the state. I get that. I think that, again, we've talked about everything from the electoral college on back, and the 2 senators per state, with states with nobody, and that Dallas got more people than some states. But anyway, that all being said, I do get a chance to go and Senator speak to, like you said, our good friend, Dr. Marvin Robinson, who did so much in this community, in terms of education, in terms of just fighting for the right, and doing the kind of philanthropy that his career and life afforded him. And so I'll get a chance to speak to that. Madam Chair, I look forward, as Vice Chair of the Dallas County Juvenile Board. I know we did have a walkthrough, and COVID kind of curtailed that. But on behalf of Judge Cheryl Shannon, who is our chairman, and me as vice chairman, we look forward to working with you with this, what we consider to be one of the best juveniles departments in the state. And I think the Texas Juvenile Probation Commission will, TJJP will attest to that. So we look forward to that.
Thank you, likewise.
Okay.
Let me say this, Commissioner, thank you. And I know that there's still a lot of work to be done. And I'm going to continue with Representative Criado. because there's some intergenerational things going on. Yes, you were elected back in the 80s, I was in the 90s, but there's some intergenerational things that I want to talk about. And then I want to make certain, Representative Correa, that we answer some of these questions. So Commissioner, thank you for being on. Make certain you convey my further condolences to the Robinson family. And I will talk with you a little later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Representative.
And so it's two of us, Victoria. You know, let me say this. I can recall when she decided to run, I was right there with her. And we've been, I would say, we at the hip, we've been joining at the hips, but that would not be a true characterization since she is about the size of my wife in terms of height, you know. But we've worked on things together and have been very successful. And so I want to talk to you about a couple of things before I start answering some, open this up to some questions. In terms of intergenerational elected officials, what are some of the things that you see that my generation, I'll put it that way, of elected officials need to be doing in order to make certain that we are addressing the issues of your generation?
Sure. And you know, I think one of the sort of in our culture, we're raised to you show respect to anybody that's older than you. And for us, I think that you know, we have to be thankful for all of the work that was done before we ran for office to even open the door for us to be able to be here to run to serve our communities. You know, going back to women marching in the streets for us to be able to have a right to vote, to the civil rights movement, to you know, now what we're seeing continuing advocacy for voting rights. And so I think as we all just need to continue to try to listen to each other about the issues that are facing our community. So, and I think a lot of the issues are similar. Like, people are trying to keep a roof over their heads. Folks are trying to figure out, you know, how to save money so they can send their kids to college, or how are they going to afford to send their kids to college. There are, you know, a lot of first generation, in particular, in that, you know, within our Latino community. My dad came from Mexico, from a small town, and when he came with a 6th grade education and a dream, and he had a dream for a better life. When he came here, rolled up his sleeves, and back in the day started a TV repair shop. And so that, you know, and this was when the TVs were not the flat screens we have nowadays, they were the big TVs, but he wanted to start a business. He wanted to give back and help his family. And so I think those issues of helping small businesses continue to be something that is important, especially after COVID. And we saw a lot of small businesses were really hit because of the COVID impact. But you know, I think it's just continuing to work together to advocate for laws that help our community. The campaigns may use different strategies. Like, now campaigns are using TikTok. I still don't know how to use that, or I'm not on it, but you know, it's just getting the message to younger voters in different ways. Back then, when I first started running, I had the young kids on our campaign show me how to use Snapchat, and that's how we were, you know, campaigning and putting Snapchat filters whenever you go to a polling location, so that when folks take pictures, they're going to see your little filter on their phone. So it's just like new methods of campaigning. Now the Facebook digital ads have, you know, are being used by various campaigns, but nothing can beat, the data shows nothing can beat that one-on-one, in person, knocking on a door to ask somebody for their support and to listen to what issues are important to them. So, you know, I think despite the generational differences, we all have the same heart in the end for service and for serving our community. And I'm honored to be able to work with you, Senator, to learn from you and all of the great work that you've been doing. And that's how we learn and we get better. We learn from, you know, from from history and what's happened in the past, and some of the fights that we're having now, we know that they were being had years ago, and as Republicans are trying to roll back our rights in various ways. And so we've just got to continue to work together and to help turn out the vote.
Well, I have one question that is in the questions, and one of the questions is something that we've always talked about, we continue to try to do. How do we make certain that the younger generation who ultimately want to be elected officials, run for public office, get involved? And I say this to you, and let me see who asked that question. I'm messing up. Okay, this is from Thelma Clardy. Thelma Clardy, who is an attorney here in the city, and also the chair of Southwest Dallas Democrats, and also a precinct chair. Her question is regarding preparing for the future. How do we start grooming future candidates so they know how to run and can start gathering resources to run and be a viable candidate? What I would say to you, Thelma, is this. It's something we keep on talking about and talking about. For those who want to run on the Democratic platform, I sincerely believe that the major organizations within the Democratic Party need to come together with the Democratic Party to have a fellowship program or a training program. I see different groups talking about doing what you're saying, but there's no coordinated plan to make certain that we use our resources in order to develop such a fellowship program or a cohort or a pipeline of candidates. If we were to join our resources together and come up with a particular platform in order to do that, then we would be more effective. Yes, I know that there will continue to be different customizations of leadership depending upon issues that different groups may very well have, but I very much believe, Thelma, that we should consolidate our resources, come up with a playbook that have common denominators in it, and then allow individuals to customize after that. What are your thoughts about that, Victoria?
I totally agree and think that would be a great idea for the party to take on. We do that within our campaign and our legislative office, help develop that pipeline, because when I became interested in politics when I was in high school. So I volunteered for campaigns. I went to go knock on doors. Back then they had the big green paper that, do you remember, was printed out from that, from like those printers that stuck together and had the little dots on it. And that's what we would take to go knock on the doors. And so getting that experience and then staying involved locally, the creating internships. I also interned when after I graduated from college, before I went to law school, I was an intern for State Representative Rafael Lancia, who's still, serving now. And so just, I know those experiences helped me get exposure to the political process. And we've had interns as young as 8th grade back in the day. One of my former 8th grade interns is now a high school student getting ready he just flew his first flight. And so on his first solo flight, I saw on his Facebook and his mom's Facebook. And so and some of my former interns are already applying for law school, they're graduating. And we know that we want them to come back home and run for office. And they have had that experience now from learning from our campaign. So I think just that constant mentoring of students and continuing that pipeline and opening doors for them like doors were opened for us.
But I agree with you 100%, and that's exactly what we need to do. And I'm glad Camille White, who's also been very involved in Democratic politics, just posted that we've got to remember that the convention, the 23rd Senatorial District Convention, is on March the 19th, 2022. Again, the convention's on March 19th, 2022. Camille also put in there exactly how people who want to participate will be able to sign up for that particular convention. One of the issues that continue that I want people in Dallas County to be very aware of, and we've got to prepare for, we are beginning to see more and more Latinos vote, okay? And guess what? the population is increasing more rapidly than African Americans, Asians, Anglos, et cetera. And so we've got to make certain that as we begin to see the increase in the Hispanic population, we're going to see more and more Latinos running for office. And so the question then becomes, how do we make certain that we have a coalition of individuals that have the same interests, whether they're black, white, brown, purple, or pink, that are running for offices in the Democratic Party that we will be able to support. And so how do we continue, Victoria, to develop a coalition between Latinos and African Americans, recognizing that there will be people in the African American community that don't want to do it, and there will be people in the Hispanic community that don't want to do it. What are your thoughts about how do we get that done?
Right. And I think for those of us that do want to work together, when we look at the big picture, we're all being attacked by a lot of these laws that the COVID pandemic disproportionately impacted both of our communities because of access to healthcare. We all need to advocate together, and and many of us are for Medicaid expansion. When we look at our schools, the state wants to divert funds for vouchers. We see those attacks every single legislative cycle, where the majority of the students in our neighborhood schools are students of color. And we know that the education is a key to economic prosperity for our state. Our state benefits by making sure that kids have the right education and access to higher education. The voting rights, when we talk about Commissioner Price, and you mentioned us being able to take an assistant into the polling location. There's specific federal laws that dealing with language barriers. And in particular, the Latino community, there are a lot of, for example, naturalized citizens and others that, Spanish is their primary language. And when Republicans are trying to make it harder to even take an assistant into the polling booth, that's something that impacts not just our community, but many others. And so the issues that we all advocate for impact both of our communities, whether it's access to state resources, equitable distribution for funds for historically underutilized businesses. It's just we have to work together. We have to put whatever maybe local issues have been happening in the past aside to try to work together. The Latino community's population in Texas, we're about to become the majority in the state. I remember when I was growing up, people would say in 2050, Latinos are going to become the majority, or in 2030. The Latino population is now 40-point-something%, and the white population in Texas is 40-point-something%. It is just a matter of days, or I don't even think a year. I'm not sure, but where we're about to become the majority. And our community is very under-registered. So although our population is growing substantially, we are not registered at the same levels as other groups. So that's something that we're focusing on very strongly, because more Latinos register to vote, that helps the top of the ticket as well. That helps the state flip. But we as a party in particular have to work to earn the votes of our Latino community, because as we see, Republicans are making a very strong play, especially down in the Valley for Latino votes. They're working hard to do that. They're putting up Latino candidates, for example, to run for office. And so for us as a party, in the past, I feel like a lot of our issues have been ignored. And so we've got to make sure that we are focusing on investing and working to earn the votes of our Latino community, to want to make sure that they stay, with our party, because we're the party who's going to provide the most to them, but not take our community for granted.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, and we've got to make certain we develop those coalitions. And two things before we further talk about this. Gene Ball, who has been involved in Democratic politics forever. And when I ran for district attorney, Gene was right there. And I was back in the mid 80s, Gene. I'm sorry that we didn't get your question answered about how are what percent of the ballots, the vote by mail ballots have been rejected and cured. I think I'm going to make sure and get with the commissioner to get the latest information on it. But about 2 weeks ago, we know that about 40% of the mail-in ballot applications had been rejected in Dallas County. And I don't know what the cure rate is, but we'll look into that and make sure we get back with you on that. And then Camille White also said that if you're interested in becoming a delegate or participating in the convention, you can go to TexasDemocraticConvention.com. Again, TexasDemocraticConvention.com. Let me follow up again with our conversation, Victoria. I agree with you 100%. What we need to do as it relates to make sure we have that coalition. We've got to make certain that different groups within our communities that have historically worked together, continue to work together, and identify other groups that can sit down, talk about what particular activities need to be engaged in. Let me give you an example, and I'm going to ask you for examples in the Hispanic community in Dallas County. We have and you've heard of this because you've been involved in some of the Divine Nine activities in terms of fraternities and sororities within our community as a group of individuals. There are others too. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm just identifying those now. And so my question is, are there similar type organizations that we should be looking at in the Hispanic community to try to get them together for purposes of having a common set of goals and priorities?
Yeah, and I'll mention three. One of them is the LULAC organization. LULAC was founded in 1929. I joined when I was in high school, and it is the nation's largest and oldest national civil rights organization. LULAC has chapters within high schools. It has chapters within the colleges, and it advocates for civil rights, just as the NAACP, which was older organization that or our organization has learned from. And so the LULAC organization, certainly, I'll say another organization headed up by Eric Cedillo here locally in Dallas is the Latino Voter Education Coalition, LVEC. And what they're doing is registering voters on a nonpartisan basis in the high schools. A lot of these students are, majority students of color that maybe don't know how to register. And so they're now creating clubs in the high schools to create that sort of civic engagement component. So, and then the third organization I would mention is Somos Tejas. It's headed by one of my former campaign managers, Ramiro Luna, who's a dreamer, and their sole focus right now is also on, Latino voter engagement and Latino COVID impact, and just especially with Spanish language and trying to, on a nonpartisan basis, inform individuals on a year-round basis as well about what the issues are. What's a city council person, do? What is there's a lot of basic 101 training that new voters want and need, and so that's what they're focusing on.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to spend the last 20 minutes talking about the operation of the election under these new laws. And to the extent that you can shed some light on that, I'd appreciate it. If a voter is obstructed, harassed by a poll watcher, what should they do?
I would think that one would need to immediately report it to the election judge and the polling location. Also, there is a phone number. I'm going to look it up and put it in the chat here in a minute for voter protection attorneys. We've seen voter intimidation tactics in the past. It's something that we raised during the legislative session to raise the flag about the expansion of poll watchers, for example, that want to intimidate voters. And so, but it needs to be reported immediately to the election judge and to the voter protection attorney. So I'll look up the number and put it in here in a second. Or the Texas Democratic Party has a voter question 800 number as well that should be helpful.
Right, and people ought to make certain that they are aware of these numbers so it can be kind of real-time intervention, and also resolution. So for those of you that are precinct chairs, make certain that you alert to the persons in your precinct that of telephone numbers that they need to have at their fingertips in order to get things resolved in real time. You know, there's a question as Victoria is doing that. Let me talk about this. Can you turn around and take your telephone into a polling place? Yes, you can, but you need to keep it in your pocket. Okay. You can't be using your telephone in there and taking pictures while inside a secure area where people are actually voting. There was an issue as to whether or not these poll watchers having more power down there. Yes, they do. They do have more power to make certain that they can observe what's going on in the polling place. But there was, the bill is introduced in the Senate, there was a provision in the bill to allow poll watchers to take their cameras into the polling places and just kind of video what's going on. We're able to fight that back, and the good thing is that we had some Republicans also were outraged by the ability of poll watchers to be able to do that, so we were able to get that out of the bill. However, at the place where votes are being counted, they can take their video cameras and be able to use that. In addition to the voting process at the county level will in fact be live streamed, so people will be able to watch that also. As it relates to poll watchers getting inside of cars, say that you're taking a loved one up to a polling place and that person is sitting in their car. A poll watcher can't get into the car, okay? Can they be strategically located? Strategic being a very subjective term. Yes, they can, but they cannot get into your car. And so just kind of remember that. Victoria, if you don't know the answer, because I'm catching you cold on this. If I'm a church, all right, and I want to do souls to the polls, and I want to be the driver, there are new laws that require a form be signed if you're driving someone to the poll. If I'm the bus driver and I'm just driving people to the poll who are getting out, walking into the polling place, do I have to sign any type of forms indicating that I'm the driver driving those persons to the poll?
You know what, Senator, I believe I recall you debating this on the floor of the Texas Senate. So I'm going to defer to you on what ended up happening with that.
Okay, good. And I'll be subject to check as things change over and over again. But if a church is doing souls to the polls and persons are getting off of the bus in order to go into the voting location, then you don't have to deal with all of the signing of forms in that situation. However, if you're helping them get off the bus and they're going to be voting at the curb site, then the person would end up having to sign forms indicating that those forms would be on the website of our election administrator in terms of what would be required. I think it's more of a disclosure issue than anything else. So just kind of be aware of that also. Were you able to put that number and everything into the chat?
I did, Senator, and it's 844-TX votes. 844-TX votes. If you look at the social media for the Texas Democratic Party as well, they often post it. In case you forget it, just feel free to go to their social media, and they keep posting it often. But it's 844-TX votes. So
there it is. It's in there. So make sure you see it. 844-TX votes. The senator mentioned this. Kelvin Bass mentioned the issue we have raised regarding organization entities who drive. Okay, I just did that. And so we just got to remember, we'll have people driving individuals to the polls. But here's his situation. Who's going to enforce it? Okay. The fact is, somebody can complain about it, then they're going to have obviously evidence. But who turns around and enforces? Is it the Attorney General? Is it the district attorney? Okay. And so there's issues concerning jurisdiction. We'll continue to work on that too. When you begin to think about the election judge, can you talk about generally, has the election judge's power been curtailed under the new election laws?
You know, Senator, we went through so many iterations of the elections law. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'm going to defer to either any election officials that we have on here or to you. I don't want to misspeak.
Okay, no, I got you. Okay, I understand that. And what I would say is that no, okay, the election judge still has ultimate authority in the polls. Now, obviously, election judges and other elected officials are going through training, and I would recommend that you listen very attentively to the instructions that you're being given there. But in terms of your authority, poll watchers have been given additional discretion, but in terms of your ultimate authority, I don't believe that has been curtailed whatsoever. You know, Victoria, I appreciate you taking time being on here with us this morning.
Absolutely.
We're going to turn around. I was hoping that Judge Jones was able to make it, but he's not, and he's probably at Marvin Robinson's funeral also. And I'm going to ask my staff whether or not there's any other information we need to provide so I can get to that. Make certain that you know an issue has come up. Can I take my handgun into the polling place? The answer to that question is no. You cannot take your handgun into the polling place. And so we're gonna. One other question.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much, Senator, for organizing this. I think these dialogues are so critical. And if anybody needs anything, do not hesitate to reach out to our office. Our Mesquite District offices in Mesquite. We're also all over social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and Snapchat at Victoria for Texas.
Okay, I was getting ready to ask you for some closing remarks. Do you have anything else you'd like to talk about?
I just want to thank you, and thank you everybody for what you're doing in the community, registering people to vote, turning out the vote. Every single vote matters, and we're bringing positive change to the state. And so thank y'all for what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Representative Criado. I got it right.
You got it.
And let me say this, we have not had any, all the eggs and issues so far this year have been virtual. We're going to go back to having them in person and at our next meeting of eggs and issues. So I want you to make sure that you stay tuned to that. And so we can get back together. We know the pandemic is still with us, and we've got to be extra careful, and we're going to be extra careful in terms of planning a personal eggs and issues. And we're going to have eggs, and we'll continue to have these issues. And hopefully as a result of that, we'll come up with solutions. Thank you very much for joining today, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Remember, February 14th is when we start voting. Have a great day. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.